Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon everyone. First of all, Eid Mubarak to all of you. Hope you have had a good Ramadan and good Eid, great Eid. Alhamdulillah, so we are back to work now. Everything has gone back to normal. Yes, we have to. So we've got today Sahara team. They work with Alzheimer Society and they will introduce in details themselves. And I've got Rabana, Shugufta and Sania. So I'll hand over to Rabana.
Thank you very much.
Then Sania.
So, Assalamu alaikum ladies and welcome. I would like to thank farzana and CMM for inviting us to raise awareness on our service and to raise awareness on dementia. So I'd just like to tell you a little bit about Sahara. So Sahara is a new project, a new service that's been commissioned by the Alzheimer Society. And it's reaching out to people within the South Asian communities to raise awareness and to educate them and to make them come forward. So it's for anyone that's actually suffering from dementia or has memory loss or is worried about the memory. So that's who we are, and we're working in the Greater Manchester area. And as you know, there is no such word for dementia in the Urdu language. So the word that we came up with was Sahara. I'd like to introduce Farzana's just mentioned our name, so we'd just like to tell you a little bit about ourselves. So obviously my name's Rabana. I started with the Alzheimer Society in March 2023 last year. Didn't have any background with dementia, but obviously had knowledge of health and social care because that's what I taught for so many years. I gave up teaching so I could get to work with the society because it's a charity, and also to give back to the community, and knowing that there is a need because a lot of South Asian people don't know what dementia is, and it's to actually make them aware of what it is, what the symptoms are, what the signs are, and the reason why they need to come forward, and just to make that change. So that's me. That's it.
Anyway. Do you want to introduce yourself first?
Yes. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sania and I am a dementia advisor on Team Sahara. I, again, like Rabana, have been on the team for a year. I was in IT before I joined the society. I joined the society and this project in particular because I have lived experience of caring for someone with dementia. So I was 13 years old when I started looking after my dadaji, and my nanaji recently passed away with dementia as well. And to add to everything else, my mother-in-law has just been diagnosed with vascular dementia as well. So it's safe to say that I have a keen interest in dementia.
So my name is Shugufta Majid and I'm also one of the dementia advisors on Team Sahara, and prior to this, some of you might know, I had a business here in Longside, which was a fabric retail shop, and then I moved on to being a family support assistant working in primary schools as well as high school. And I also, like Sanya, have got lived-in experience, so I looked after my father-in-law for 8 years with dementia. And the reason I took this role on was because when I was looking after my father-in-law, I couldn't access any support out there for him at all. So there was nothing culturally that was appropriate to his needs and neither language friendly. So as you know, when our dads came over in the 60s, whatever, all they did was work. They didn't interact with the culture and they didn't learn the language, just too busy working to put food on the table. So when there was, when I was told there's groups out there, they were all more for British white people, not for our community. So this is why I want to raise awareness that, you know, we need to do more for our communities out there. We need to raise awareness about dementia because dementia is an illness, and we need to erase the myth that we as an Asian community have about dementia. So that's the reason I took this role on.
Right, so about us, to just put it more on it, Sahara, we chose the word Sahara, which means support in Urdu. It's a dedicated dementia support service for the South Asian communities in the Greater Manchester area. So the three of us actually cover all Greater Manchester area. We've got Sanya that does Tameside and Ashton, we've got Shugufta here doing Oldham, Rochdale area, and then you've got myself doing like Manchester area. And we're trying to reach out to as many communities, many groups, organisations, places of worship and so on, just to raise that awareness. So we offer free confidential advice for anyone with South Asian communities. We've got leaflets that we've got in front here that we distribute to like GP surgeries, places of worship, community groups, doctor surgeries, you know, libraries and so on. It has a number on the back, so they can self-refer, or they can actually just call the number on the back, refer themselves, or they can go to the GP, or the GP can refer them, or the memory clinics or the hospitals can make a referral as well. So our advice is that we make it tailored to the needs of the service user, the person with dementia. It's not only the person with dementia, but it could be the carer as well. The kind of support that they need and what they're looking for. It could be something like legal advice that they don't know about.
Used to describe the set of symptoms you get with dementia. So it's the symptoms that you will get when you get dementia. So obviously we know about memory. So memory is forgetting your yadash, you're forgetting things. But that can also happen with just old age as well. But there is, and I will come later on with the difference between getting old age and forgetting things. Used to describe the set of symptoms you get with dementia. So it's the symptoms that you will get when you get dementia. So obviously we know about memory. So memory is forgetting your yadash, you're forgetting things. But that can also happen with just old age as well. But there is, and I will come later on with the difference between getting old age and forgetting things and what dementia is. So memory is definitely one of them. Perception is like how you see something. So when you've got dementia, you might not vision things how a normal person who's able to vision things, you won't see that. So it'll be a different way of seeing things in your mind. Reasoning, so you can't do your hisab kitab type of thing, you know what I mean? So they might have, even with their money, they'll have issues with that. They can't think, how much does this cost? What is this? What's the value of this? So that will all go as well. Your thinking as well, so you don't think like, you don't process things how you normally would have done. So that's another symptom. Judgment, your how to agree a yes or a no. So you have a lot of like toing and froing with the person with dementia. They'll always, disagree and not agree and things like that. Language, that's another thing that will happen. So they will start, when they're talking, they will slow down because they can't think what the next word is, they can't think what the next sentence, so they totally forget what they've just said, so they can't remember what the next bit of the conversation was. Your concentration is very limited as well. They don't focus for too long. You won't be able to put them in a room like here and get them to focus on a conversation because they'll just wander off into another part of their memory or whatever. So lack of concentration. Next one. So other signs of dementia, alongside with what I've already discussed, is unable to recall details of recent events and conversation. And I'll give you an example. Abid Gayena, my mother-in-law rang my mum up. I rang my mum up to say Eid Mubarak. My mother-in-law had a conversation for half an hour with my mother-in-law about Eid and everything. And then 2-3 days later, she goes to me, Shagufta, hi. I didn't ring your mum, I didn't speak to her. That's her sister as well, married to my Kala's son. Anyway, and then she goes, I've not spoken to her. She goes, so this is just like, and she's been diagnosed with MCI, which is mild cognitive impairment, which is like the start of dementia. But I can see within the last year it's progressing now and it's getting worse. So even like having a conversation, sometimes she stops mid-sentence, she can't carry on because she can't remember. She's mashallah 86. Yeah, she's good age. And some of you might know she's a very strong woman, very daddy. And when she's good, she's still daddy. So unable to recognise or recall names of family members. And another example is like my dad had quite advanced dementia. He lived in Scotland. So because he didn't see me regularly, when I did used to go, he would look at me. On a few occasions this happened and it used to really upset me. He'd be sat there and he'd be looking at me, but he would not know who I was. So he'd be just staring and staring. I'm like, Daddy, it's me, and he's like his dad, do you know who I am? And again, because I wasn't aware what dementia was and how to deal with somebody, when you keep asking them, that makes them more anxious. And I would do that with my dad, not knowing, so Dad, why can't you remember? It's me, Shagufta, and she doesn't remember anybody's birthday, she doesn't remember that, last year we went there, whatever. She was asking me the other day, when did I go to Pakistan? She can't remember now, she's got a bank account, she can't even remember what she's got in that bank account. So the memories are going, that's why it's very important, like at our age, to now start sort of thinking about our future and what we need to do to prevent all these things happening. Because dementia is more to do, depending which kind of dementia you've got is more to do with health as well. But I think Sanya was saying Alzheimer's is something that anybody can get. So that's a dementia as well, and that's to do with your brain cells. It's a neurological one, so that anyone can get. Vascular dementia, mixed dementia is partly to do with your health. Frequent pauses and substitution when finding words, I've already discussed that. When you sort of, you know, sometimes we get brain fog, don't we? We're talking about something, suddenly we just forget what was my next thing that was, you know, what did I just say now? I've forgotten this or whatever. But that's other issues. But with dementia, it's like it's just a block happens. We can still search in our brain and recall what was it that we wanted to say, but with dementia, it's just a block. Friends and family. So the person with dementia or the person that's having memory issues might not realize that they're doing that, but family and friends will start noticing that, you know, they weren't like that. They'll start seeing the personality change. And with my dad, we didn't realize, because we didn't have the education about dementia, that my dad started quite early on. He suddenly started getting very angry, and we couldn't understand why is dad doing that. He suddenly started picking on one of my brothers a lot. Accusing him of things and saying things, accusing my mum of stealing money, you know, lots of things, and we didn't realise that this was actually part of his dementia. We just thought, you know, he's just getting angry all the time, and he wasn't like that. But that's how it happens. So you start seeing the personality change, behaviour change. So those are the signs that we need to look out for, you know, within our family members. Again, change in normal behaviour, I've just discussed that. You will see they either get more angry, or, you know, sometimes they go into very low moods and it's like they're getting depressed. So these are all signs. Unable to complete tasks, so that's a common one with dementia. So for example, they might be going to make a cup of tea or something, they'll get the mug out, but they don't know what they have to do with that mug. So they'll just sat there holding it, not knowing what the next you know, thing is to do with it. Unable to emotionally regulate their feelings and emotion, that's where you'll see them. 1 minute they're absolutely fine, next minute they're very angry. And that was what my dad was like. He would be sat there around there watching TV, whatever, and next minute my brother might walk in or something that triggers something in there, and he'll just start shouting and screaming and whatever. But what we did notice with dad was it was only certain people he would focus on, that he would show his anger. Like my sister-in-law lived with my mum and dad, but he never showed any anger towards her, but he picked on my mum, he picked on my brother, he picked on certain people in the family that, you know, we don't know for whatever reason he did, and he would focus on them more than, you know, certain people. So yeah, next slide. So the risk factors, it's all down to your health, how you look after yourself. That's why we need to do it early on in life rather than think of it later on. If we look after ourselves now, like they say, health is wealth. You look after your health, we can try and avoid getting the illness. So obviously in our community, diabetes is so rife anyway. Every other person's got diabetes. You'll have a family member with you in your family that will have been diagnosed with diabetes. High blood pressure, again, very common in the South Asian community. High cholesterol. And what this is all to do with what we eat. It's the food we put inside our bodies. So what food you put in is what you're going to show on the outside. So if you put the wrong foods, it's going to show on the wrong, you know, on the outside. So these are things that we need to really control now. I know it's hard to eat healthy. Look, we fasted for 30 days, and we did it, didn't we? And if we'd kept that up, doing what we're doing now, trying to eat more healthily, and just on time have your, you know, your breakfast, your lunch and dinner, and try not to snack in between with sweet things, chocolates, whatever. My downfall's chocolate, I love time, and then try and sort of eat more healthier. Loneliness, untreated depression, loneliness and isolation. So that untreated depression, we've all got stress in our life nowadays, especially with what's going on, you know, with the economy, with, you know, financial issues within families and everybody. So that causes extra stress. We have grown-up children, we get stressed with that, we get stressed with family life. These are things that all, you know, go towards your health. So that is another thing. And loneliness and isolation, you will be very surprised now that I've started this work, how many elderly people live on our own, our apnea, like our mum and dad's age. Like, we would never think to leave our mum and dad on their own, but there is families that are out there, and that's where they get lonely, where they get depressed, and that's where it accelerates their dementia. And it's so sad when we go into these homes to see like an Uncle G sat there all by himself, trying to make a toast for himself, or trying to get food from outside that's unhealthy for him because he's got no family around him to support him. and it's really sad, and it is happening. But before this job, I never even thought that existed, but it does. There's a home in Rochdale, there's a sheltered accommodation, and every single person in there, I don't know how many she got in there, about 80 people possibly, or maybe less.
I think it's about 35
flats. Yeah. It's 35 flats, some of them are couples, some of them are just single, that are living there with no family support. They're actually living there on their own, so it is sad to see, but that is what's happening. Obviously we don't do alcohol and smoking, well I hope not. So if you've got a learning disability, for example, Down syndrome or autism, these are risk factors to get dementia later on in life, because their symptoms are very, very similar to dementia. So that is a risk factor as well. So brain injury, if you get an injury to your brain, obviously you've affected some blood cells, the structure around your brain, so that could possibly cause a high risk factor to get dementia. Stroke, that's you if you get stroke, your blood flow to your brain is getting less, so that is also going to affect your a chance of getting dementia. Infection of the brain, like meningitis, again, it's affecting your brain cells, so again, there's a high risk factor of you getting dementia.
मेरा नाम भगवंत और मैंने जरा डिमेंशिया और अल्जाइमर है. Sometimes my friends say तू तो पागल है, तेरे तो कुछ पता नहीं लगता है. लेकिन साड़ी ना हैबिटी होती है. They didn't mean you are पागल, but they just say. साड़ी सोसाइटी मेन प्रॉब्लम पता क्या है? Straight away we say इनका दिमाग खराब है. जब तुम ये कहते हैं ना कि मेंटल हो गई, तो अपने दिमाग पे और प्रेशर पड़ना है. One day मैं गड्डी चला रही थी, एकदम अचानक ना मैंने ऐप भूल गया कि मैं किथे जाना. That day I realized something wrong with me. Really something. Town ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉੱਥੇ ਨਾ stall ਸੀ ਲੱਗਾ. Just I went in and asked, I need help. I feel that something wrong with me. फिर ਉਹਨਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ hospital ਦੀ ਵੀ appointment ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਫਿਰ ਉਹ diagnose ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਹੈਗਾ Alzheimer dementia. That time, I was a bit scared, but it is very helpful. I think everybody should go for diagnosis. After that, मैं खुद ही उन्होंने दसिया भी it's not a mental पागल नहीं है, it's just a disease. ते फिर किसी ने किया, उन भी ग्रुप में जानने से थे, we talk about dementia. तो उन्हें ना सारे हम हौली-हौली ये पता लगे. Nobody feels shy. When I'm very poor, they all help me as well. They care. And now I'm telling all my friends, जो कहते ना सामने याद भूल गया, we don't remember that. मैं कहते there is no harm going to clinic for test. At least you know there is something wrong or not. जब बच जाता वो 2-4 साल जाता तो शायद आज मैं तो ना गल भी ना कर सकती. सानू ही फायदा है, नुकसान कोई नहीं. जे हुण तुहानू पता लग गया कि मैनू है तो तुहानू कोई थोड़ी कि मैं डाउन हो गई है. Why should we hide things? The reality is that. और ना कि मैं वैसे भी चीजें इसका कोई फिक्र भी नहीं है. इसनू बुढ़े होना नहीं किया जाता, इसनू बीमार होना किया जाता.
You can't live alone. Sometimes the situation is the parent and the mom and dad have to live on their own, but as long as they've got family support. The people that I've met have got no family support, so they're good on their own. There's no brother, no sister, nobody there that can support them. So it's nothing wrong with having a mom and dad living on your own, because eventually I think that's what's going to happen with us anyway. But as long as you've got a family network that can check in on you and whatever, just to make sure you're alright. The people I've come across don't have that, so they are bilkul on their own. So I just want to clarify that it's not wrong to be on your own. It's fine as long as there's a good network there to support you. Yeah.
So I'm going to be talking to you about the types of dementia. So there are actually hundreds of types of dementia, but we're not going to talk about all of them today. So we're going to talk about the 5 main ones. So on this picture you can see we've got Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, Lewy body, frontotemporal dementia, Huntington's disease, Parkinson's disease, and mixed dementia. So we're going to be talking about Alzheimer's first. So Alzheimer's is a build-up of proteins in the brain which affects how the brain cells transmit messages. As time passes, more cells get affected, leading to a worsening conditions. So this affects the memory problems and thinking and reasoning difficulties. So Alzheimer's is the most common form that causes the symptoms of dementia. It's the one that we know the most about as well, so it's the most understood. So it is when a formation of abnormal proteins start to build up in your brain. So when they start to build up, they start to degenerate, so they start to die. And that will leave a gap. So if you were to ever look at a scan, I tried to get a scan actually of a brain, but I wasn't able to. If you ever look at a scan of a brain of a person with Alzheimer's, you will see massive gaps in their brain. And what happens is that when those gaps start to appear, the brain automatically starts to shrink to try and fill those gaps. Obviously when you're dealing with a massive organ like the brain, when something starts to happen, obviously it's going to have an effect, isn't it? So Alzheimer's, I won't go into the tangles. So we have the hippocampus, which is where all our memory is stored, well, most of our memory is the short-term memory. So a person with Alzheimer's, typically the symptoms that you would see is that they can't remember what they've done in the day. So if they've met someone or what they've had for breakfast, but they're able to recall something that happened 20 years ago. You see a person with Alzheimer's repeating stuff because they might have had a cup of tea and forgotten that they've had a cup of tea. So they'll say, oh, you haven't made me tea. So you'll see a lot of repetitive behavior as well. So the important thing to remember is that although a person might not remember what's happened, you have something in the brain called the amygdala, which stores all the emotions. So you have the hippocampus, which is the memories, and then you have the amygdala, which is the emotions that are attached to those memories. So for example, if someone was to go out, so like a family gathering, if you go to the beach, we used to take my nanaji all the time, so we'd go to the beach. I mean, he wouldn't remember going to the beach, but the feeling of being around his family, the comfort, the happiness, that will stay with him for longer. It will slowly go, but it stays for longer. So some people, we've come across people who will say, oh, they won't remember that, so does it matter? It does matter, because there's an emotion attached to that memory, and that is more long lasting. So it's important that any experience that you have with someone that you love that has been diagnosed with dementia is a positive one. Don't just kind of rule it out and say, oh, they won't remember, it doesn't really matter. So then we have vascular dementia. Alzheimer's can happen to anybody. We'll discuss vascular dementia and what that means, but with Alzheimer's, it can happen to anybody. It's got nothing to do with your health or anything like that. It's a neurological condition. So it can happen to anybody. So it's nothing to do with the way lifestyle or health or anything like that. So vascular dementia, so that's when the blood supply to the brain. It's basically when the blood is not getting to the brain properly and it's not providing the brain with the oxygen and the nutrients that it needs to function. So when we talk about vascular, we're talking about our body now. So what Shagufta was saying before. So this is where health and our lifestyle and our diet comes into. So looking after ourselves is really important to avoid any kind of diagnosis of vascular dementia. The symptoms again are memory loss, problems with disorientation. People with vascular dementia tend to have issues with balance. So you see people with vascular dementia, they fall a lot because they're not able to stand. Their perception, like we discussed before as well, so I can see in front of me, so I'm able to walk up to you, but a person with dementia might not be able to see what's in front of them, so they will dawdle or they might fall or trip over their own shoes or their own feet even. So vascular dementia is the second most common form of dementia. It accounts for about, I think, 5 to 10% of all cases of dementia. So we have now, frontotemporal dementia and Lewy body are more rarer forms of dementia. I think in all our service uses, I think we have one person who's got Lewy body. We haven't come across anybody with frontotemporal. That's how rare it is. So we'll talk about frontotemporal first. So this affects this part of the brain and the back part of the brain. So the front part of the brain controls our behaviour, and the back part of our brain controls our language and our speech. Frontotemporal dementia so dementia overall first is not hereditary. So although you might have it in generations in your families, like I have it in generations of my family on both sides, so on my dad's side and my mum's side, it's actually, there's no evidence to say that it is hereditary. So if someone was to have it, it's not going to be passed down, although we see that pattern. But with frontotemporal, there is a gene. So if someone in your family has been diagnosed with FTD, there's a high chance of you're passing it down to your children, or you can be tested for it to see if this gene is active in your body. I was just reading the other day actually, it came up on my Instagram feed. It wasn't from the Alzheimer's Society, but it was from Alzheimer's research. There's so it's not a South Asian family, but it's a white British family, and their mother had FTD, their auntie, so their mum's sister had FTD, and the two brothers, so the mum's passed away now, auntie's passed away, and the children have both been tested, and they both have been diagnosed with early onset of frontotemporal. So if you're being diagnosed with something before the age of 65, most likely there's some sort of factor here with FTD. Lewy body is a protein that builds up inside your nerve cells. We don't know, there's not enough evidence to know why the Lewy bodies build up. Again, it's very rare, and it has links to Parkinson's and Huntington's. Yeah, Huntington's, I think. Oh no, Alzheimer's, sorry. So it has links to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. So Parkinson's disease is most widely known as the kind of shaking disease, where you see hands will shake. So they're very closely linked. There's a gene factor there as well. Just very briefly as well, mixed dementia. So this gets a bit more complicated. This is when you have a diagnosis of more than one type of dementia. So the typical kind of combination that we see is vascular and Alzheimer's, but I have seen Lewy body and Alzheimer's as well, because there is a link there as well. So this question gets asked a lot. When we go to meet a family member, usually a son or a daughter, will ask, oh, where is my mum got it? Is it advanced? Is it mild? Is it the beginning? And the kind of answer that we give is that everybody's dementia journey is different. Although the symptoms are shared between people, every person is not different. Every person in this room is different. We have different life experiences. We have different family structures. Everything's different. So we can't expect one journey, even though there's a commonality between the symptoms. We can't expect the journey to be different, to be the same. So, I mean, early stages of dementia, like Shagufta was saying, is how we diagnose as mild cognitive impairment, where there's a small difference in change in behaviour, and you're not being able to remember as much as you normally would, and this starts to gradually build up. Moderate and mild is, again, you see a difference in the personality changes. A person might become a bit more quieter, low mood. Some people express it as being quite hyper. There's more issues with being able to remember what they're doing. And then we have the later stages of dementia, which we call advanced dementia. So this is every single symptom at its worst. So this is for my Nana Ji, this was loss of language, so not being able to speak. So the last 3 years of his life he wasn't able to speak. So his way of communicating was to scream. And also incontinence is a big one, when you're not able to go to the toilet and not being able to toilet yourself. So for Nana Ji, he had a catheter put in. And also wore a pull-up, well I don't want to call it a nappy, but a pull-up pad. And then towards the end it was, I don't want to scare anybody, but yeah, it wasn't nice, you know, and it was seeing someone go from one healthy, active person, because he was a very healthy, active person, always at the masjid 5 times a day, first one there for Fajr, last one out at Isha. So there's, when we look at later stages, it's a very difficult time for family and carers, because, and this is the stage that most families are at when we go and visit them, because families will ignore these stages, and when they get to this stage, it's crisis, they can't cope, it's too difficult, they don't know what's happening, and it all comes back to understanding the person. When we do something, like when I do something in the day, there's always a reason why I'm doing something. So when a person with dementia does something, we think, oh, why are you doing that for? There's a reason for it. At that time, we can't understand it, but now looking back, I know Shagufta will know, when we look back at it, when we've lost someone and we look back at it, we can see the reasons why they do it.
Don't worry. So remember I was talking about the difference between memory loss and dementia? These are the differences. So forgetfulness can be normal part of aging. So memory loss doesn't affect your daily life. So that's, you know, what I'm talking about, just when you forget things. So that's memory loss. When, you know, it doesn't affect, we can still carry on. I might have gone into the kitchen for something, but if I go back out of the kitchen, 5 minutes later I'll remember that's why I went into the kitchen, you know. So it doesn't affect our daily life, not affecting you completing tasks, so you can make your handi, even if you've got to put your lesson under again, you can still complete your handi, okay? No difficulty in memory or learning new tasks, so if you go to a group or something, you're learning how to embroider or whatever, you might not get it straight away, but it doesn't stop you from learning, but with the person with dementia, it does. They can't have that brain capacity to learn a new task. No underlying medical conditions that causes memory problems. So, you know, you've not got you've not got heart issues, you've not got high cholesterol, you've not got diabetes. So, you know, that's just general memory loss. And normally with women with menopause, we all go through brain fog, and it does sometimes feel like we've got dementia, because like I can never remember anything at all. So dementia, it affects your daily life and ability to stick to normal routine. So you don't have a normal routine. Their routine goes right out the window when you've got dementia. They don't have a routine. It's just how they are feeling at that moment, what their mood is, what their emotion is, and that's what they express in their daily life. And difficulty learning new things. So like I said, they can't learn a new task. It's very difficult for them to have that capacity to get very frustrated, get very agitated. It upsets them. Difficulty completing a task. Again, if you start them with something, they can't complete it. Like I said, example again with the cup of tea, they can't complete it because they don't have that capacity to remember what the next step is. And obviously the family are noticing different change.
Okay, so now obviously, you know, right, so now it's just about the tips of communicating with someone who has dementia. You know, we've talked a lot about it now, what the signs, what symptoms are. So it's really, really important that when you come across somebody with dementia, to have clear communication, that you speak to them clearly, that you use simple words and simple sentences, that it's not complicated, and talk to them, get their attention softly, not shout at them, because obviously it is stressful at a time like Shagufta mentioned and Sanya mentioned at the early stages. You don't know what's going on, you probably shout back at them. It's very important that you have them, you know, give them that eye contact and talk to them softly and gently so they understand. And then also make sure that they understand the questions that you are asking them. Don't ask them open-ended questions that are going to make them think and get frustrated and anxious. Ask them like questions, maybe just a yes and no question. Be patient. Don't point out their mistakes, because that's another thing that starts to trigger with them. They can get angry, confused, upset, and be unsure of themselves and make them doubt themselves. So it's really important that you have patience with them and not point out the mistakes are. So the last is like, make sure that you don't put them in a stressful situation. People with dementia become very frustrated and anxious very quickly. Similar to what Shukta said, you know, about Barbara, when he didn't know who she was, she didn't sort of say to Shukta, her own daughter or whatever, she actually went along with it, and that's the way you calmed them down, by just agreeing with them. So those are like the 5 tips to try and understand where they're coming from, because you've got to remember they're in a different world from you, and they're not seeing it the way you're seeing it. Okay, so that really brings us to the end of our session. But just to say why our service is different from the other services, because obviously we understand the cultural and religious beliefs, and that's what they're looking for when we go to see them. When we go on our home visits, it just puts a big smile on them when they see someone that's come in, that can speak the language, that can relate to them. So, you know, that's why we're different from the average, you know, services that are around. Our service also provides face-to-face, over-the-phone, email and written communication, but we also do one-to-one, go out and visit them as well. We're language friendly, so we can speak Urdu, Punjabi, as well as English, and then obviously we have that family familiar oriented approach where we'll go in, we won't say Mr. whatever, we'll say Andy or how are you and all that, so we relate to them in a familiar approach. Okay. So that's you know, you can contact us if you have any concerns about your own memory or someone else's memory, if they've received a dementia diagnosis, support someone with dementia, want to find out more about dementia, so you can contact us. We've got the leaflets here, we've got the same information on there with our contact number, our email address, and obviously it's the 3 of us that are actually the dementia advisors for the South Asian community at the moment. Obviously as we grow, we're getting more aware and the service grows bigger, but we will probably have a lot more dementia advisors as well. So yeah, that's it. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you for your patience.
Rosanna, Sanya and Shugufta, for wonderful committees for dementia. I would now like to invite Yasmin Ikramji, you're here. What? I thought you want to say something about dementia. You're just here to listen? Yeah. All right, I thought you want to give some input as well.
No, yet.
You're very welcome to do that.
No, I'm okay.
Yeah?
No, thank you.
All right, okay. Anyone wants to share any experiences?
Yes,
or any questions?
I work in a dementia home, senior carer. There's no Asians, they're all English.
Right.
Asians tend to look after the home, don't they?
Right, you're right. We tend to, we do tend to look after them, and the world, you know, that's what, you know, we brought up to. But
it can get very difficult.
But when you go out in the community, you'll be very surprised that people, when the dementia advances, and I'm going to be very honest, once my dad's dementia did advance before he passed away, my brother did ring me up and did say to me, Shugufta, I can't cope, and I'm thinking you'll put him in a care home, and that conversation did happen, and I'm just thank Allah so much that it did come to that point, because I saw what my dad was like when he had an episode. It wasn't very nice to see. My dad, who was a very passive man, he taught children the Quran in his younger years, was coming out with language that was so inappropriate when he was having that episode, accusing my mum of all sorts of things which were not true at all, but he would not remember in the morning that he'd done that. So it is happening. People are trying to open up care homes for the South Asian community.
There should be, there's a need for it, but there isn't, and it is really hard because families are struggling. When we go out to these home visits, you know, that's what we're hearing all the time, that it's getting really, really hard and really, really difficult, but they feel guilty about sending the parents into a home. You know, what will the community say? It's the reputation as well. So,
Can I ask you,
She was the next one.
are you trained?
I've been doing
No, I've been trained to deal with those people with dementia.
yeah.
So is that part of your...
The theory is different from the practice.
Oh yeah, that happens naturally. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, is that
We're
you
trained
actually...
how to avoid punches and kicks, which is worse. When you're on the floor with them, it's not
Right.
So do you work in a dementia
I'm a
specific...
senior carer in dementia.
okay.
Yeah, I know everything.
Sorry,
Can I
yeah.
just come back on this point? It really makes me a bit angry sometimes when people say we look after our own, because that's not reality. We do look after our own, it's a wonderful thing, if we can. But I think we put pressure on each other and on our community, and that's why sometimes people who need quite professional help end up not getting it because everybody's more worried about the
community.
And we really need to address this issue because it isn't about the community and it's not about you. It's about the person.
It is.
And if you actually care and love that person, you will think about their dignity and their respect. So I say this because I looked after my mother-in-law and she did have to go into a nursing home. She was doubly incontinent. She could not be left for a minute. Care workers are not there if you can't afford it 24/7. And you definitely don't want somebody sitting in their own soil for hours on end because the care worker's not come or you're not there. So it is about the dignity of that person. And you mustn't forget that, and that must be part of what you do, is to think about the person and their dignity and what's the best for them, not what the community thinks is the best.
Can I give you an example? I went to a visit and it was his mum and they were at the wake centre looking after her, and then he had come to the point where he wanted to put her into a care home. So obviously there was the siblings to consider as well, what their thoughts were. They were against it. But he was the main carer, so he was having that issue and he got on the phone to me, and this was when we early on started, we were quite new yet. And he said, Shgufta, because he's very practicing, he goes, will the wrath of God be on me if I put my mum in a care home? And I said, no, because the point is your mum needs to be looked after. So if you can't give her that care, but somebody else can give her that care and be there 24 hours making sure everything's, you know, looked after, medication, etc., and you are willing to pay for that care, then there's nothing, why should the wrath of God be on you? Because you're doing your first, you're looking after your parent, even though you're not there physically yourself, but you've got somebody there doing it. So to be honest, we do talk about care homes, we do discuss it when we can see the family are at wit's end, but it depends on the dynamics of the family. It depends if they're a bit more modern thinking or very traditional. If it's a traditional home, it's like hitting a brick wall with them. So, and who gets affected, who does most of the care when you're in an extended family? It's the daughter-in-law. It's I've been in that position, I was the daughter-in-law, and then I'm not saying my family didn't come on board. They've come on board great now when it's come to my mother-in-law, but when it was my father-in-law's care, it was literally all on me. And I struggled. I can't forget the days when I used to take him to the hospital, get him out into the wheelchair, wheeling him into the hospital for his appointments, even to one point where I was taking him out of the car, not being trained, and he actually fell and I had to lift him up, and he was a big man on my own. And then I was thinking, you've got 20 grandchildren, you've got sons and daughters, you've got their children, and yet there's me on my own struggling to care for you. But that board was put on me because it's your daughter-in-law's duty to do it. No, it's not my duty. It's not just many a times where I was mentally affected by all this, where I wanted to give up. It affected me, with my marriage as well, because you're sort of saying, why is it me? And he's like, it's my mum and dad, what can I do? I'm not saying my husband's always been supportive, but the most of it was all on me, and it really affected me. And even now, that's why when my mother-in-law was, when my father-in-law passed away, first thing I said to my extended family, you all need to take a day each with her. You all need, even if it's just a few hours, share it, please, because I can't cope. So we have got it in place now that she goes one day to one son's house and one day to one daughter's house. And sometimes they can't do it for whatever reason. That's absolutely fine. But I have the salli that she's being looked after, and the way I said it is, look, we all get a diff for doing it. We all get a diff for doing it. So
what you were saying, when I've been on home visits, they're in a very similar situation as yourself, but the other siblings don't want to know. So there are some daughter-in-laws that are actually stuck and they can't do anything about it because the husband doesn't want to know. He's saying, no, she's living with us, no one else, the other brothers and sisters don't want to know about it. They're all busy with their lives, they've got kids, they've got families. I mean, it was really sad when we went to see another girl, and this was the south of Manchester, and she was the youngest sibling. And she's got the responsibility of a mother. She's only 35, and she's had to put her marriage on hold because her other brothers and sisters don't want to contribute, they don't want to help, they don't want to take that responsibility, and it's just so unfair. And it's really sad because, what can you tell them, what can we say to them?
You know,
You
and
can't
intervene in somebody's family life.
we
That's
can't-
not our
we
role.
can't
But we
tell
can just sort of
what
advise,
it
and
is.
I always make sure the person living with dementia is there when I'm advising that, you know, we need to get the family on board, because they need to, sometimes it's them, you know, like a traditional mother-in-law, father-in-law, you know, I'm not asking the family if you'll, you know, we're fine, this and that, you know, mera beta hai, but they forget it's not the beta that's doing the looking after, it's the daughter-in-law that's doing the looking after, but they forget that, you see. But that again is with education, isn't it? If they don't know their Islam, they don't know their deen, they just know the culture. So that's why sometimes we do talk.
I think 20, 30 years ago was kind of Alzheimer's dementia was not, and now it's like every other household. Somebody's got it.
And do say one in every third person will get dementia in their lifetime at some point.
Okay.
That's how it is now.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
you said in that presentation that there was people that have got diabetes, people who've got blood pressure. So again, every other household has got that. So is there a connection with the kind of medicine tablets that you have, there's something there, isn't there? In your kind of...
Yeah, I was talking to somebody yesterday and she said exactly the same thing when we were talking about it. All these pharmaceutical medications, they all have side effects.
Yeah.
Some of those side effects are obviously affecting, but then it's also the environment that we're living in. You know, there's things coming out like Teflon pans, you know, non-stick pans have got it as well that can give you Alzheimer's, aluminium foil. There's other things and factors, like we've got chemicals in the air. You know, vegetation that's grown in like chemicals as well. You know, it's not pure food like it used to be back then where it was clean air and so on. So there's all these environmental factors that are affecting.
I think the best thing to do in those circumstances is a lot of the pattern is that you go to the doctor says, oh, you're diabetic or you've got high blood pressure or whatever, this is the treatment. And generally our people go, take it, let me take it, because I just want something. It's just to make you feel better.
I think that's the education.
I think that's the challenge.
Education as well.
Yeah, you need to challenge.
Yeah,
you have to be tough.
Because it's like from root, isn't it? So
Can
it's
I
all
just
very
say
well
something
us
as well?
fixing everything over here, and alhamdulillah we will be. But if we can catch it here and say, look, you know, try to, I don't know if you're allowed to do that, I don't know, but I'm just saying, I think it's very
just to
important.
challenge the GPs and the professionals.
I think that's important to say in the presentation as well. You know, I think it is.
Clinically trained to give that kind of advice. And I don't think it's just linked to, don't leave here by thinking that it's just dementia and blood pressure. And that you can,
there's other factors.
These are risk factors. Even if it's a risk factor, I think that's still important to kind of
many
say,
people
well,
with dementia, with diabetes and blood pressure will not get dementia.
no, I didn't say every other person will, but I
And
think
it's a
there
very
is a connection
small,
with the
it's a
actual.
very small connection, it's a very complex genetical and neurological issue.
I would disagree.
And if you look at the stats worldwide, you'll see that in countries where probably they don't have those issues have the highest levels of dementia. So I think it's a complex issue that I don't think you need a GP to come and talk about that.
Yeah, we're not medically qualified. We just advisors,
I'm not saying you
Yeah, I
are.
think you're just saying that.
But there is possibly, we don't know what it is because there's not enough research to say is what it is. Possibly some of your medication is affecting it. We don't know that. We can't say for a guarantee. That is an opinion that you've got. Maybe even as an advisor, I might say because I follow somebody on TikTok called Barbara O'Neill. When I listen to what she says, and I'm thinking, possibly it is that because she talks about a lot of medication that affects and can get you Alzheimer's. So we don't know. We're not here to say
we're all
yeah.
individuals, aren't we?
Yeah.
And then things affect us differently. So you know, more people.
Autism, I'm glad you brought that up
autism,
because my son's autistic and he's not on any, there's no medication, there's no cure for autism. So he's not on any medication. We use strategies to keep him, he goes to school, you know, does normal things. There are challenges along the way to do that, but my worry is that, you know, like I don't voice it, but internally my worry is that obviously some of the kind of symptoms that he displays are very similar to a person with dementia, and with autism being a neurological issue and there not being any treatment for it. I mean, I'm not saying he's high risk because there's no evidence to say that, but it is a worry. But there's lots of things. These are just a few things that are quite popular in our communities, but there are so many different factors: environmental factors, family, everything. It's
Stress is the main factor as well.
yeah, stress, anything. We in today's society are dealing with so much. You know, what's happening in the world, what's happening in our homes, everything. There's too much going on, so we can't pinpoint what, you know, we're not God, we don't know what's happening, but I would say to you personally is just look after yourself. Watch what you put into your body. You know, keep your mind active, so cognitive stimulation, social stimulation. You all being here today, you know, some of you might know each other, some of you don't know each other. Having a new conversation, having a new, asking questions. This is all new things to you. So when you're at home and you think, oh, my mind's busy all day. It's not actually busy, because when you're at home, you're cooking and you're cleaning. It's the same thing over and over again. So your brain's in a routine, so it's actually not using its actual entire function. So I would say that, yeah, so I'd say, I mean, what I say to my mom is after my Nana Ji passed away, because I know it's not hereditary, but it's just a worry, isn't it, in the back of your mind. So I say to, you know, Mom, I say, I mean, you know, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. I mean, Mum's not in 60 yet, but it's just, why leave it to get to that stage? You know, let's put interventions in place early. And with my Nana Ji, so I've seen two different sides of it. So my Dada Ji was diagnosed very late, and he didn't have any quality of life at all. Ended up in a care home, and then he passed away. So nothing wrong with a care home, like Athiya said. You have to look at your situation. Our family situation was different then. Alhamdulillah, my Nana Bu was in a different situation. He was diagnosed early, interventions were put in place. He had 16 amazing years. Yes, it was hard to see him deteriorate, but for him to be part of every birthday, anniversary, every holiday. We took him on holiday annually, every day, every week, every year. He went to Portugal with us, he went to Dubai with us, everywhere, he was always there. So you can live well with dementia. It's just putting things in place before you get to a certain stage. And we can easily do that every day by what we put into our bodies, exercise, our lifestyle, just using your brain. So I'd say to anybody, you know, just keep going, keep using your brain, do things that you wouldn't normally do. Learning a language is an amazing thing that you can do, which I'm doing at the moment. I know how to read Arabic, but I'm learning how to speak Arabic, and this is something that is very difficult for me to do, but I'm using my brain, so yeah.
How to prevent the dementia in the very early stage? If you diagnose it, how you can prevent the dementia?
Eating just helps. That's what we look at. खाना पीना वो अच्छा करें, अपना एक्सरसाइज करें. In the day आप इतने busy हैं कि आप सारे काम तो करने हैं, right? हांडी रोटी वगैरह वो तो is normal है ना. But give half an hour to yourself in the day. Yeah. Healthy eating, खाना अच्छा grill करके बनाओ, air fry में बनाओ, तेल में ना, don't fry anything. It's the oil. Can you imagine when you fry samosa? If you went to squeeze the samosa, how much oil comes out of it? So just trying to look for alternatives.
If you want the samosa, you have the samosa, just put it in the air fryer.
What about the next people are saying, just think about air fryer as well. Everything comes up with
everything in moderation. Moderation. I'm not saying for everything in the air fryer.
Suddenly, and I'm studying I read it.
Oh, that was too much.
I think Alia, that's menopause. That's menopause, yeah. Forget how menopause, she really got to do it all the time.
But she's saying she don't have a dementia, but nobody saying Amina, she does. Because when she's talking to her, she remember everything. But when she's front of the carer, she's a different. So she's always very, like she got the same story. The mother-in-law, she have to look after her. But every time she's telling me, my mother-in-law, she's a drug queen. She's lying to doctors, she's diagnosed, but how we can identify like
people with dementia, and it happens with autism as well. My son does it. They're very good at masking, but they can only do that for a certain amount of time. My mother-in-law, when the doctor comes, she's absolutely fine. And the doctor says, why have I come out to see her? She's absolutely fine. But an hour before that, she's having a meltdown. You know, she can't remember what's happening.
Create a problem for us. Don't worry.
But it's just, that's what dementia is. It is ups and downs. You will have a person who will have constant behaviour, be normal, be themselves. And then you will have an episode, I don't want to call it an episode, I don't like that word, but there will be a change. So we call it the step-like approach, and it happens more with vascular dementia. With Alzheimer's, there's medication that you can take to slow it down. There's no cure for dementia or anything that causes dementia, but with Alzheimer's and with Lewy body as well, there's medication that you can take to slow it down. So when you have Alzheimer's or Lewy body, you see a very gentle, a very slow progression. Where this is, I'm doing this because I'm visualizing a graph, and so we're looking at a very gradual slope. With vascular dementia, it will be fine, and then something will trigger and it will go down. So that's why when people say, oh, she's fine, you know, like kisi ne jaddu kita hoya wa, she's fine one minute, she's fine. It's not. This is dementia. This is what it is, and vascular dementia in particular.
For that or any age, like from the children can have or young adults?
No, it's that early onset dementia would be say late 40s.
We have someone on our service who she's 49. She's been diagnosed with dementia. But there is
more later on in
How
life.
you can go to the doctor and check by yourself? Is the doctor assessment?
So this is a really good question. So a really good question is diagnosis.
Jesus, a very
one conversation in a room, please.
I know there's so many questions. So diagnosis is really important. So what was your question, sorry?
I said how you can understand.
Yeah, so if you're having,
if you have any, you can go to the doctor and say, can
yes, if you're worried about, so when we're talking about memory loss, like Shugufta was saying, it's not like I forgot where I put my keys. I do that all the time. I go upstairs and think, oh, what did I come upstairs for? It's when it's every single day and we're looking for a long-term pattern. You go to the doctor, you say, I'm having problems with my memory. The doctor, the GP, will do an over 65 test or an over 75 test, depending on your age. That is the first step to indication of whether there's something more sinister going on. If you fail that test, they will refer you to the memory service, and the memory service then takes over. You can have you'll have a brain scan and then a further 2.5 hour assessment, and then you'll get a diagnosis as well. So it's really important, if you are worried about someone with dementia or you're worried about yourself, if you have issues with memory and they're going over, I don't know, a long period of time, please see your GP as the first kind of port of call. So this lady over here is being so patient.
I think the question's probably been answered. Now my question was, how do you differentiate a brain fog to onset dementia?
That again is very medical, technical, because when we go through menopause, we're quite in our late 40s, early 50s, so but you just come out of it, you know, once you've been through the menopause, you realise it's So at that stage, it's like, because we're going through the change and our hormones are changing, we would probably say more like brain fog. But like I said, if it's something like Sanya said, it's constantly doing the same thing, you're never remembering anything, you're constantly forgetting this, constantly forgetting, then there's a concern. But where you just for a few minutes forgotten where you put your keys, or you've forgotten somebody's name, or you've forgotten what you went in the kitchen for. Because remember, we've got very stressful life. There's 1,001 things going on in our head. I might be stood here, but I'm thinking, what am I cooking tonight? You know, so we're always on the go. Our brains is constantly, you know, it's just churning constantly. Yeah. Obviously, if you're very concerned or family have noticed, then yes, please do. Or that's what we want to say. Is, like that woman said in the video, it's very important to get in touch with your GP for yourself or for your family member. Don't ever think you're wasting their time. That is their job. That's their job.
The biggest to add to what she just said is, she's right. The biggest indicator is that between brain fog and dementia or early signs of dementia is that when family members or people close to you or your friends are noticing a difference, not just in your memory, but noticing a difference in change in behaviour or personality. So this is something that would indicate, I'm not saying dementia, but it could indicate. Also, another really important thing that we have not mentioned is UTIs, urinary tract infections, can cause memory issues as well. Urine infections, UTIs, they can cause memory issues. So if someone is struggling with memory, please see your GP, because it might just be a UTI, because it can cause, honestly, you wouldn't believe it, causes so many problems and so there's lots of things. So don't always jump to, it could be dementia. There's so many other possibilities, but always see your GP as the first, that's what they're there for. They're there to help, and always challenge and be firm. don't just accept what they're telling you. Ask questions, even if they are tough questions. Ask them because you have the right to ask them. Someone else.
I just want to know: is there respite available for a carer? Somebody I know who could do with a holiday because they're looking to look after.
There's private care. You can do private.
You mean
care.
respite for the person with dementia, so the carer can go away?
Yes.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So if you're able to self-fund, you can put in a person into respite for however long you need to.
So if somebody will actually come to your house?
No, they have to go into.
Unless they do private care, if they want to pay for somebody.
If you can afford to, if you can
stay with them for
self-fund.
the whole week or whatever,
What
you
is
can.
available then? Excuse me. I'm going to the dementia.
Yeah. So you can get private carers coming in if you're willing to pay for them. There's plenty out there that you could pay and pay them to come and stay with you while you're on holiday. At least you know they're in the home with them 24 hours a day. Or I don't know if they're the local authority, if they've
Yeah,
got...
so if you are not able to self-fund, you can go to the local authority. So we did it for my dad and my daddy as well, because they had a stroke 6 months between them. And we wanted to go to Pakistan, and so we put them into the same care home in a couple's room. Went through the council. So you'd have to go through an assessment, financial assessment and a care assessment, and then they would place you into a care home for however long you need to. I have people on my service who have done it because
I think this particular case they would like somebody to come and stay there.
if that's the situation, that's more heading towards self-funding. The government would pay for 24-hour care for someone to come and stay.
Screening, breast screening, cervical screening, bowel screening, any kind of health. What happens when people have got like dementia?
The same thing that would happen with
But what support is available? Because like say for example we're going to go for breast screening and then they needed a carer, but that carer wasn't up to date with what was on offer or what was going to happen at their breast screening. Then is that sort of, do you sort of train and make the carers aware that they still need to go for their health assessments?
You mean, are you talking about the actual carer or the person with dementia?
Well, it depends on what level of dementia you're talking about. Like you said, they can be mild, so they would be capable of going for the screening.
Yeah, it depends on what stage of dementia they're at. Also, we have, not a lot of people know about it, is the hospital at home team, where they would literally, it only works in very not complex cases. So if someone's got a lot of underlying health problems and you want to avoid going into hospital, there are lots of services. The hospital at home team offers so many services. So like going out for a blood test or a bowel screening or an X-ray or an ECG, they will come home and do it for you. You just have to ask for the services. There are so many services that we don't know about. My mother-in-law was in hospital for 2.5 months. And they have a service in hospitals where you can have one-to-one staff, a one-to-one with a nurse. We didn't know about this, so we paid for a carer to stay with her 24 hours when we were not there. So even at night time she had someone with us. But they had a service in the hospital for that particular reason, but they just don't tell you about it. So you have to ask the questions like, do you have this service? And it's important to know what is available.
Because I work within breast screening, so what it was, for us, if you can't physically get for breast screening, you're not going to have breast screening. And so it's making you aware and self-check. But also we know that there is in some cases where a carer can actually accompany them into that, but they can't otherwise, because in other services when somebody's got LD or physical disabilities, because of the radiation, they don't allow them into the room, and if they can't physically hold themselves up, then they don't have the screening basically. There's nothing, whereas with carers, with dementia, if they can physically hold themselves up, they can still have somebody in the room.
So
but it's not something that's widely known.
It just depends on the situation. It's hard for us to say. It depends on what car.
But I'm saying it on the level that people think, well, they don't need it because they've got some dementia anyway. They don't need it because they don't look at them. That's what I'm saying.
They will have to look at the bigger picture. What capacity they've got? Will they be able to go there? Will they understand what they're going to do? They'll have to look into a lot of that before they actually send them out to have a breastfeeding. Yes,
What age does it start, this dementia?
You've already got it, Tina. What?
I love it too. 5 minutes ago, she said, I want to ask a question.
Yeah.
And I forgot everybody else.
See, I told you you've got it. It's too late for you, love. Sorry.
Just continue.
There is no, it's individuals. It's individual. It depends on your health. It depends on what you are, what health issues you've got. So we can't say when you will get it. Some are getting it early. Some are getting it later on in life. Some are getting it in the late 60s. It all depends. My dad got it quite early. From what I can remember, my dad passed away at 80, but we were dealing with his dementia for a good 15 years. Because we weren't educated in it, we didn't know what was going on with him. So
You mentioned the urine.
yeah. My dad had a lot of that, and he would hallucinate, he would get delirious. So we weren't understanding, but that was to do with that. So the minute he was on antibiotics, he was fine afterwards. So before you jump to dementia, think about other options that could be possibly going on in your body. And also, the reason why dementia is very talked about a lot now is because we're living longer. 100 years ago, we weren't living past 60 really, so it wasn't really coming along yet. So there you go. So now because we're living longer, and as we age, brain cells are dying and stuff in our body. Yeah, we do look for volunteers, yeah.
Okay, I would like to thank once again to Sahara Group with Alzheimer Society, and also I would like to give a massive thank you to my CMM executive team. We've got Sahara, we've got Alia Hashmi, we've got Nabila Raja, and Nabila is here, and also Kosa gone.
Yeah.
That's Kosa is not executive team formally. She's not formal member of the CMM. But she's always always comes on time. Actually, she comes early and she helps me to set up and everything. She's my very good friend. So thank you to Kosa as well. Yeah.